I opened my eyes in the hospital and a man held my hand. He sat on the chair next to the hospital bed, leaning forward slightly, as if he had been sitting like this for a long time. "You're awake," he said. The voice was low and steady, as if comforting a frightened animal. I tried to speak, but my throat was as dry as sandpaper. I opened my mouth and could only make a vague breathy sound. He stood up immediately, handed the water glass on the bedside to my mouth, and held the back of my head with one hand. His movements were so gentle that it didn't look like he was taking care of a patient, but more like he was holding something that could break at any time. I took 2 sips, and the warm water slid down my esophagus, and a strange warmth filled my stomach. "Take your time," he said. "You have been in a coma for 11 days. Your body needs time to recover." 11 days. The word hit me like a stone thrown into an empty room, its echoes buzzing. I was in a coma for 11 days? Why? What's wrong with me? Who are you? When I asked this question, his expression didn't change at all. He even seemed to have expected it. He put the water glass back on the bedside table, sat back on the chair, folded his hands on his knees, and said to me in an extremely patient tone, "I'm your fiancé, Emily. We're getting married next month." I stared at him for about 5 seconds. Fiancé. Getting married next month. Those 2 bits of information, taken together, should have elicited some kind of emotional response from me, surprise, or shyness, or at least a basic cognitive confirmation of, "Oh, so I have a fiancé." But I have nothing. My brain is like a computer without an internet connection. These words are just words, not linked to any memory, without any pictures, without any warmth. "I don't remember you," I said. My voice was very flat as stating a weather forecast. He nodded, and the tenderness in his expression even deepened. "The doctor told me that you might have temporary memory loss. That's what happens sometimes with head injuries." "It's okay, Emily, we're not in a hurry." Head injury. Another word that sent shivers down my spine. I subconsciously wanted to raise my hand to touch my head, only to find that there was an indwelling needle stuck on the back of my right hand, and a transparent tube connected to the infusion bag on the top of my head. When my fingers touched my forehead, I felt a layer of gauze. "What's wrong with me?" I asked. "You fell down," he said, his tone as calm as if it was a nice day, "and hurt your head. But you're fine now. The surgery was successful and you're recovering better than I expected." Fall. Operation. Fiancé. The information was spinning around in my head like pieces of a puzzle, but none of them fit. I looked at him, trying to find some familiarity in the face. His eyebrows, the bridge of his nose, the tiny mole at the corner of his mouth, nothing. This face is as unfamiliar to me as the white curtains, gray monitors, and blue hospital gown in this ward. "What's your name?" I asked. "Michael," he said, "Michael Reynolds. You used to call me Mike." Michael Reynolds. I recited the name silently in my mind. No response. It's like pronouncing a name randomly pulled from the phone book. "How long have we been together?" 2 years. He stretched out his hand to help me pull up the quilt that had slipped down. His movements were as natural as if he had done it countless times. "You chased me. I kept rejecting you for the first 3 months, but you were too persistent." Then he smiled, and there was something very slight, almost nostalgic in that smile. "Then I surrendered. I chased him." This message felt even stranger to me. I'm not saying I know myself, I don't know anything right now, but pursuing someone doesn't sound like something I would do. But who am I to say that? I barely even remember who I am. In the next few days, I was like a computer that needs to reload all programs after restarting, learning about the world bit by bit. Michael was by my side almost every step of the way. When the nurse came in to change the dressing, she would smile and tell him, "Mr. Reynolds is here again," and the doctor would directly discuss my recovery with him during rounds, as if he was my legal guardian. No one raised any questions about his existence. Every morning he would arrive around 7 o'clock, carrying a paper bag with breakfast bought for me. He remembered that I didn't like drinking coffee that was too hot, so he would open the lid of the cup and let it sit for 5 minutes before handing it to me. He remembered that I preferred blueberry muffins to chocolate. He even remembered my habit of holding cups with my left hand, although I don't even remember that habit now. He brought me a change of clothes, my tablet, and a bouquet of white daisies to put on the bedside table. He told me about the look of our home. The sofa in the living room is gray, the tiles in the kitchen are white, and the curtains in the bedroom are dark blue. He said that we had a cat named Oliver, who was orange and obscenely fat and would jump on the bed and step on my hair every morning. "It's at my mother's place now," he said. "We'll take it back when you're discharged from the hospital." When he said this, there was something very certain in his tone, as if the future was a map that had already been drawn, and we just had to follow the road. Getting married next month, picking up the cat when we get out of the hospital, and continuing to live the same life we had before. But here's the problem, I don't know what kind of life we lived before. I started paying attention to every detail. It's not that I doubt him, well, maybe I do, but this doubt is not rational, it's more like an instinctive uneasiness seeping from the bones. It's like waking up in a strange room that everyone tells you is your home, but the walls are the wrong color, the windows are in the wrong position, and the smell in the air is wrong. On the third day, the physical therapist came to help me with rehabilitation exercises. I stood beside the bed and walked a few steps holding on to the railing. My legs were as weak as two noodles. Michael stood next to me, his hands weakly guarding my back, not touching me, but the distance was close enough that I could smell the scent of him, some kind of woody perfume, cedar and sandalwood, which smelled very good, but also had no sense of familiarity. After the therapist left, he helped me sit back on the bed and massaged my calves. His technique was very professional, with just the right amount of force, pressing from the ankles all the way to the knees, and he was very patient with every move. "Have you done this for me before?" I asked. He looked up at me with a smile in his eyes. "Every time you come back from a run, you ask me to press it. You said this is one of the main reasons why you stay with me." I tried to smile. That smile must have been stiff, because I saw it fade a little, but he didn't say anything. That night, I waited until he left and called the night nurse who came to take my temperature. She is a black woman in her 40s with deep nasolabial folds on her face but gentle eyes. "I want to ask," I said, "who sent me here when I was admitted to the hospital?" She glanced at me, lowered her head to record the temperature data on the tablet, and said in a casual tone, "It should have been sent by the ambulance. I'm not sure about the details. You can ask the head nurse on the day shift." "What about my family members? Who signed the consent form for the surgery?" She stopped what she was doing, raised her head and looked at me, her expression becoming a little subtle. After a while, she said, "You'd better ask the doctor about this. I don't know much about the situation." After she left, I lay in the dark for a long time. The uneasy feeling became thicker, so thick that it enveloped me like a layer of fog. I couldn't tell what made me uncomfortable, the nurse's evasive look, Michael's too perfect tenderness, or the vast, blank, echoless silence in my mind. On the fourth day, I made a decision. In the afternoon, Michael said he was going to buy something and left for an hour. Before he left, he helped me raise the bed a little, put the tablet in my hand, poured a glass of water and put it on the bedside, and told me I'll be right back. While he was doing these things, I had a brief delusion that maybe I really should trust this man. The way he took care of me was so attentive that it didn't look like he was pretending. But after he closed the door and the footsteps disappeared at the end of the corridor, I struggled to sit up from the bed. My body is still very weak, and every movement requires a huge amount of effort. I peeled off the tape on the indwelling needle a little and pulled my hand out from under the needle. It was stupid, I know, but I didn't want to get caught in the tube while turning things over. Then I stood up holding the edge of the bed and moved step by step to the bedside table. The nightstand drawer holds my personal belongings. A wallet, a mobile phone, and a silver necklace. I picked up the phone, pressed the power button, and the screen turned on. No password is set. This discovery made my heart skip a beat. If I really have a fiancé, if I really have been with him for 2 years like Michael said, why is there no password on my phone? I'm not even that, well, I don't know what I am, but my gut tells me that I should be a password person. I opened the browser and rested my finger on the search bar for about 10 seconds. Then I entered my name. Emily Carter. The moment the search results popped up, my heart felt like it was squeezed hard by a hand. It's not because I saw any horrific scenes, but because the first result is a piece of news. Los Angeles woman fell and was seriously injured, suspected to have caused tragedy due to emotional disputes. My fingers are shaking. I clicked on the news, the page loaded for 2 seconds, and then a photo appeared on the screen. That's me. In the photo, I am wearing a white suspender dress, my hair is spread over my shoulders, and I am smiling happily. Below the photo is a short text. On the evening of March 17th, local time, a fall occurred in an apartment in downtown Los Angeles. A 28-year-old woman, Emily Carter, fell from a third-floor balcony and suffered severe craniocerebral injuries. She is still being rescued. According to witnesses at the scene, there was a fierce argument in the apartment before the incident. Preliminary police investigation showed that the incident may be related to an emotional dispute, and human factors have not been ruled out. Currently, a man related to the woman is cooperating with the investigation. I stared at that line of text for a long time. A man related to the woman is cooperating with the investigation. My hand continued to slide down and I saw the name of the man mentioned in the news. Not Michael Reynolds. Is another name. Daniel West. I turned my phone screen off, then on, then off, then on again. Each time the news was still there, every word unchanged. Not Michael Reynolds. The man cooperating with the investigation is Daniel West. My fiancé's name is Michael Reynolds. If Michael is my fiancé, and if we are getting married next month, why isn't he the man mentioned in the news? Why was he not the one present on the night of the incident? Why? The sound of the doorknob turning made me shove my phone back into the drawer like an electric shock. I almost fell back on the bed, hurriedly pressing back the tape holding the needle, and pulling the quilt up to my chin. The door opened and Michael walked in, carrying a plastic bag. He looked at me and smiled. I brought you yogurt. Your favorite brand of Greek yogurt used to be honey-flavored. There was nothing unusual about his tone. There was nothing wrong with his expression. He came over and put the plastic bag on the bedside table, then leaned down to tuck the quilt in for me. When his fingers touched my shoulders, I felt that my muscles were as stiff as a stone. He noticed. What's wrong? He asked. Are you uncomfortable? No, I said, my voice tighter than I expected, just a little tired. He looked at me for 2 seconds, then nodded and took his hand away. Then you rest, I'll be here with you. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. But the news was playing over and over again in my mind, like a broken radio, the same sentence looping countless times. A man associated with the woman is cooperating with the investigation. Daniel West. Not Michael Reynolds. Over the next 2 days, I began my exploration. I didn't ask him directly. I knew very well that if he was some kind of, I don't know how to define the situation, but if he was hiding something, asking directly would only alert the person. I needed to pretend to know nothing, to be the docile, dependent patient who remembered nothing. On the first day, I found an opportunity to ask him, how did we meet? He was peeling an apple. After hearing this question, he kept moving his hands. The blade turned in a circle against the peel, and a thin strip of red skin hung down. You met me at a reading party, he said. You said that at first sight you thought I was the most boring person you had ever met. He handed me the peeled apple, and I took it and took a bite. Very sweet. Then what? Then you started chasing me. You came to my reading club every week, and you sat in the last row every time. You asked me a particularly tricky question every time, trying to make me look embarrassed. There was a smile on his lips when he said these words, and his tone was even a bit doting. But I noticed one detail. He didn't say where the reading meeting was held, he didn't say what he was doing at the time, and he didn't say anything that would allow me to follow the clues and find specific information. When was that? I asked. 2 years ago. In the fall. Where? A small bookstore in downtown later closed. Later it closed. What a coincidence. The next day, I tried again. This time I asked, what do you do? He was helping me arrange the flowers on the bedside. After hearing this question, he picked up the bunch of wilted daisies and put them back into the bottle at a different angle. Psychologist, he said, but I recently took a long leave to look after you. Psychological counselor. This information sent another chill down my spine. I can't explain why, but the words psychological counselor gave me a very uncomfortable association, not about him, but about myself. It seems that this profession has some special meaning to me, but I can't grasp what that meaning is. Where do you work? I used to work in a private clinic, but I'm temporarily suspended. He turned to look at me with a calm expression. I will go back when you are better. It's before again. Again, no specific information. On the third day, I did something bolder. While he was in the bathroom, I searched on my phone for Michael Reynolds, Los Angeles counselor. There are few search results. A LinkedIn page indicating that he worked at a mental health facility, but that page had not been updated in the last 6 months. List of authors of a scholarly article, of which he is the 3rd author, on treatments for post-traumatic stress disorder. No social media, no personal website, no trace of a private life. A man in his 30s with almost no online presence. There are 2 possibilities. First, he is an extremely private person. Second, he deliberately cleaned up his own traces. Then I searched for Daniel West. Fewer results. There is only one entry, a law firm's website, and the name Daniel West appears in a case record, on the witness list. No photos, no more information. This Daniel West, the man related to Emily Carter mentioned in the news, is like a shadow, whose outline can be seen but whose entity cannot be grasped. I began to notice the details in Michael's daily behavior. He barely lets me touch my phone. Every time before he left the ward, he would conveniently put my mobile phone in the drawer instead of leaving it on the bed. He said he was afraid of being crushed when I turned over. But every time he comes back, the first thing he does is open the drawer and take a look. He's making sure the phone is still in its original location. He never let me talk to doctors or nurses alone. Every time the doctor came for rounds, he was there. Every time the nurse came to change the dressing, he stood by. Once, a young intern nurse said a few words to me and asked if he was my boyfriend. Just as I was about to answer, Michael came out of the bathroom, walked to my bedside, put his hand on my shoulder, smiled at the nurse and said, "He is my fiancé." The nurse's expression changed, not embarrassed, but more like caution after being reminded. She left quickly. He controls the information I receive. The TV in the ward is always on the food channel or home improvement channel, no news, no local channels. The tablet he brought me only had streaming apps and no browser. Once I casually said that I wanted to see the weather outside. He walked to the window and opened the curtains a little, said "Sunny," and then closed the curtains again. His reasons are always impeccable. You need to rest and not be disturbed by things outside. On the 7th day, my body recovered a lot and I could get out of bed and walk around on my own. That afternoon Michael said he had to take care of some family stuff and would be away for 2 or 3 hours. Before he left, he repeatedly made sure that I had taken medicine, drank water, and had the call bell handy. After he closed the door, I waited for about 10 minutes to make sure he wouldn't come back, and then sat up in bed. This time I decided to do a more thorough investigation. I picked up the phone and opened the call log. There were only 3 numbers in the record, one for Mike, one for Mom, and one with no other name. I looked through the text messages, and there were only a few, all from Mike. The content was daily messages such as "I will be late today" and "I brought you soup." There are about 20 contacts in the address book. Most of them only have first names but no last names. I picked 3 at random and sent the same message, "Hey, long time no see. I recently had something happen and I was hospitalized. Can you come and see me?" 3 minutes later, 2 messages came back. One said "Who are you?" and the other said "You sent the wrong person." The third one didn't reply. I stared at those 2 replies for a long time. If I really have a fiancé, if we really have been together for 2 years, if I really have a normal social relationship, there should not be a "Who are you?" reply in my address book. My social circle is empty. In other words, it was cleared. Then I opened the photo album. There are probably more than 300 photos in the album, spanning the past 2 years. I turned through them one by one. There's a picture of me and Michael. In restaurants, at the beach, at home on the couch. In every photo I'm smiling and looking happy. Michael is looking at me in every photo, his eyes gentle. The photos look like the daily records of any ordinary couple. But I noticed a detail. Almost all the photos are selfies or taken with the front-facing camera of a mobile phone. There was no third person to take photos for us. There are no photos of parties with friends. No photos of family gatherings. There are no workplace photos. 2 years of love, more than 300 photos, and there is no third person in them. My finger paused on a photo. It was Michael and I in a restaurant, with 2 glasses of red wine on the table and a blurry city night view in the background. In the photo, I am holding up my phone to take a selfie. Michael is behind me, his chin resting on my shoulder, eyes closed, looking very relaxed. The photo's timestamp shows it was 6 months ago. 6 months ago we were together. 6 months ago I was happy. 6 months ago, I flipped through a few more and saw a photo that gave me pause. It was a selfie, just me. I was standing on a balcony, wearing that white slip dress, the one in the news photos. The background is a field of city lights, and my expression is different from those in the previous photos. I was smiling in the previous photos, but I'm not smiling in this photo. I was looking at the camera, but my eyes were empty, as if I was looking at a faraway place. The timestamp on this photo is March 17th, the day I fell. I put down the phone and took 3 deep breaths. Then I picked up the bouquet of daisies on the bedside table, took the flowers out of the bottle, and poured out the water. There is a label on the bottom of the bottle that reads, Los Angeles Central Hospital Neurosurgery Ward March. I'm at Los Angeles Central Hospital. I picked up my phone and entered the address into the map app. The search results confirmed this. Then I entered another address, the address of the apartment mentioned in the news. I saw it when I was searching for news. The apartment was in the city center, about 40 minutes drive from the hospital. The map showed that it took 40 minutes to drive from that apartment to the hospital where I was. If I fell in that apartment, why was I taken to this hospital? There are at least 3 closer hospitals in Los Angeles. This question has been running around in my head for several times, but I have no answer. But I wrote the question down. Then I did the last and boldest thing. I dialed Mom's number in my address book. The phone rang 4 times and was picked up. Emily? A woman's voice sounded a little nervous, but seemed to have lowered her volume deliberately. Mom, I said, and when the word came out of my mouth, it felt like I was reciting a line. I want to ask you something. What's the matter? How did Michael and I get together? There was silence on the other end of the phone for a long time. It was so long that I thought she died. You don't remember? Her voice changed and became cautious, as if she was testing a piece of ice to see if she could walk on it. The doctor said I'm going to have memory loss, I said. I can't remember a lot of things. Silence again. Then she said, are you sure you want to know? This sentence made my blood run cold. Yes. She took a deep breath, and then said something that made me almost drop the phone in my hand. Emily, your mother and I have never met Michael. You never brought him home. I sat on the bed for a long time after hanging up the phone. My mother never met Michael. After 2 years together and getting married next month, she had never seen him. There are only 2 possibilities. Either I have a very bad relationship with my family, but she didn't sound distant on the phone, and there was very real concern in her voice when she called me Emily. Either that or Michael was never officially introduced to my family. A fiancé who is not introduced to his fiancé's family. This is illogical. I lay on the pillow, staring at the ceiling, with 100 people talking in my head at the same time. News. Daniel West. Psychological counselor. Book club. Selfie photos. There is no photo album for the third person. A mother I have never met. All the pieces were there, but I couldn't put the complete picture together. Then I remembered a detail in that news: human factors have not been ruled out yet. Human factors. These 4 words were like a needle, piercing into a deep place in my mind. Suddenly, a picture flashed into my consciousness, not a complete memory, more like a torn film strip, only a few frames. One hand. Wrist. Fingers tightened. Then came the feeling of falling. The wind whistled past my ears. The ground is rapidly enlarging. I opened my eyes suddenly and found that I was covered in cold sweat. That night, I did something. After I waited for Michael to leave, after the nurse finished checking the room, and after half of the lights in the corridor were turned off, I walked out of the ward step by step, holding on to the wall. The neurosurgery ward is on the 7th floor. I walked slowly along the corridor, passing one ward after another. The door of each room was closed, and the sound of the monitor came from inside. There were 2 nurses chatting quietly in the nurses' station at the end of the corridor. I walked around them and turned in from the corridor on the other side. I'm looking for one thing: surveillance. There is a surveillance camera in the corridor of the ward, a gray hemisphere, embedded in the ceiling. I counted a total of 3 cameras from my ward to the elevator entrance. But there is a small section of the corridor next to the nurse station that is a blind spot for surveillance, a recessed corner where is the door to the utility room. I stood in that corner, leaning against the wall, my heart beating fast. Then I walked further to the area where the doctor's office was. The lights in this corridor were dimmer, and the door of an office was open a crack, with a faint light coming from inside. I hesitated and opened the door. There is no one in the office. There is a computer on the table, and the screen is dark. On the wall hung a schedule and several anatomical diagrams of the nervous system. I looked around the table and saw a stack of medical records. I looked through it and didn't find mine. But underneath the stack of medical records, I saw a folded piece of paper. I don't know what compelled me to pick it up. Maybe it's the uneasiness seeping from the bones. Maybe it's the human factor in that news. Maybe it was the hand and wrist in that flashback. I unfolded the paper. It was a copy of the consent form for surgery. The patient's name is Emily Carter. The date of surgery is March 18th. The content of the operation was craniotomy for hematoma evacuation. My eyes scanned the dense medical terms and stopped at the last line. Signed by the family, Michael Reynolds. Relationship, fiancé. But next to the signature line, there is a line of handwritten, scrawled small words, which looks like a note added by the doctor. The patient underwent a high-risk surgery. The preoperative evaluation showed that the craniocerebral injury was caused by man-made injuries. Further postoperative investigation is recommended. Caused by man-made injuries. Not a fall. Not an accident. It's man-made harm. I put the paper back, my fingers shaking so hard I could barely hold it. I turned and walked out of the office and walked back along the corridor. When I passed the corner where the surveillance was blind, I suddenly stopped. I stood in the recessed space, leaning against the wall, and slowly squatted down. An image emerged in my mind, not a flashback, an image I had constructed myself. A man pushed a hospital bed out of the elevator and walked along the corridor. He passed the corner, past the nurse's station, and pushed me into the ward. Everyone thought he was my family member, my fiancé, the one who had the authority to sign the consent form for the surgery. But when he was signing, the doctor wrote that line. Caused by man-made injuries. Who is he? I don't know how long I squatted in that corner. When I stood up, my legs were numb. I walked back to the ward step by step, holding onto the wall, lying on the bed and pulling the quilt up to my chin. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. When Michael came the next morning, everything was as usual. He was carrying a paper bag containing blueberry muffins and a cup of coffee that had been drying for 5 minutes. He smiled and asked me if I slept well, and I said okay. He sat down, massaged my legs as usual, and told me that Oliver knocked over a flower pot at his mother's house yesterday and made his mother very angry. I looked at him. His fingers pressed on my calf with just the right amount of force. He had that gentle, patient, never angry look on his face. He would look into my eyes as he spoke, as if to make sure I was listening. This man, a man I didn't know at all, signed a consent form for surgery in his capacity as my fiancé that read cranial brain injury caused by inflicted injury. And I don't even know if his name is really Michael Reynolds. That afternoon, I tried it again. This time, I decided to take the risk. Michael, I said, I want to ask you something. What's the matter? He put down the magazine in his hand and looked at me. Who is Daniel West? Time seemed to stop for a second. Not 1 second, it was about 3 seconds. In these 3 seconds, Michael's expression did not change at all. He still looked at me, with that gentle smile on his lips, and his eyes still gentle. Then he said, how do you know that name? His tone didn't change. Still the same patient, soothing tone. But I noticed something, his hands. The index and middle fingers of the hand he placed on his knee tightened slightly, as if he was restraining something. I don't remember, I said, it just popped into my head. He looked at me for about 5 seconds. Then he stood up, walked to the window, and opened the curtains a crack. Outside there was a gray Los Angeles sky. Daniel West, he said, his back to me, is a former friend of yours. What friend? You have been close to him for a while. He turned around and looked at me, his expression becoming serious. Emily, there are some things that I originally wanted to wait until you were better before I told you, but now that you asked. He came back and sat on the chair beside the bed, leaning forward and clasping his hands on his knees. This posture makes him look like a doctor talking to a patient. No, he is actually a psychological counselor. Maybe it's just his professional habit. That night, you drank a lot, he said. You were in a bad mood because you and Daniel had a fight. You called me, and when I rushed over, you were already standing on the balcony. You were very emotional and crying. I tried to ask you to come down, but you didn't listen. And then, he paused for a moment, his Adam's apple moving. Then you jumped. I waited for him to continue. I caught you partially, but your head hit the air conditioning unit downstairs. That's why you suffered a traumatic brain injury. After he said this, he was silent for a long time. He lowered his head and looked at his hands, his shoulders slumped slightly, and he looked like something had been taken away from him. Emily, he said, his voice going low, if I'd been 5 minutes earlier that night, none of this would have happened. As I looked at him, the man sitting beside my bed, the man who took care of me for 11 days, the man who signed the consent form for the surgery, a voice in my heart said, he is really in pain. But another voice is saying, caused by man-made harm. So, I said, trying to sound calm, what's the deal with Daniel and me? He raised his head and looked at me, with something very complicated in his eyes. Not angry, not jealous, more like exhaustion. You loved him, he said, but that man didn't deserve your love. He said no more. And I didn't ask again. That night, I did something else. I dug out all the photos in the album and looked at them from beginning to end. This time I wasn't looking at the content, but the timestamp. Photos from 2 years ago in the fall. The first photo is a photo of 2 coffee cups, with a coffee bean emoji as the caption. In the next month, the frequency of photos was about 1 every 2 or 3 days. Selfies, food, street scenes, and occasionally Michael's profile. After 3 months, the frequency of photos began to increase. Almost every day. Our distance has become closer in the photo, from sitting facing each other, to sitting side by side, to him holding my shoulders, to me leaning in his arms. 6 months later, a photo emerged that caught my attention. That's a photo of me alone. The background looks like an office, with psychology-related certificates and licenses hanging on the walls. I stood in front of those certificates, holding a cup of coffee in my hand, my expression a little unnatural, as if I was being forced to take a photo. The timestamp of the photo is from a year ago. I took the photo in an office with a psychology certificate hanging on it. He is a psychological counselor. The image gave me a strong sense of déjà vu, not familiarity, but a deeper, almost nauseating feeling. It's like you walk into a room and suddenly realize you've been here before, but you can't remember when or with whom. I continued to turn back. There were more and more photos, more and more intimate. We went to a lot of places, the zoo in San Diego, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, camping in Yosemite. I am smiling in every photo, and he is looking at me in every photo. But about 8 months ago, the style of the photo changed. My smile is different. Not the kind of smile that comes from the heart and the eyes turn up, but the kind where the corners of the mouth turn up but the eyes don't change. In some photos, my eyes are red, as if I have just cried. His expression also changed. He wasn't looking at me anymore, he was looking at the camera. It seemed like he was confirming something. 6 months ago, a photo emerged of that white slip dress. 3 months ago, the photo suddenly broke. The last photo is dated December 20th. It was a selfie of him and I in a Christmas market, with a Christmas tree covered in lights behind us. I was wearing a red woolen hat on my head, smiling happily. That was 3 months ago. No more pictures after that. 3 months of blankness, and then the fall. I closed the photo album, put my phone under the pillow, and closed my eyes. The next day, Michael did something I didn't expect. He brought 2 photo albums. It's not a photo on your phone, it's a physical photo album, the kind that comes from a print shop and has a hard cover. He put them in front of me and said, "I thought you might want to take a look at these." I turned to the first page and saw a picture of us. No, us. The printed photos are different from the ones on the phone. They look more real and more like a record of a person's real life. Some of us are cooking together in the kitchen, some of us are curled up on the sofa watching TV, and some of us are riding in the waves on the beach. There is also a photo of me kneeling on one knee, holding up a ring. "This is when you proposed to me," Michael said, sitting next to me, pointing to the photo. "You said you didn't want to wait any longer. You said you were sure I was the one you wanted." I stared at that photo for a long time. In the photo, I am looking up at the camera, no, looking at the person taking the photo, and my expression is one of pure happiness without any impurities. You can't fake that kind of happiness. At least I don't think I can pretend to be. "Is it me who proposes marriage?" I asked. "Yeah. You said traditional rules are too boring and you want to do it yourself." I turned to the second page. It was a screenshot of a text, printed on photo paper that looked like it had been taken from social media. The content of the text is, "Mike, I know you've been hesitating. You always said we were moving too fast, and you always said you needed time. But I can't wait any longer. I don't need time, I need you. I've never been so sure of one thing in my life. You are the person I want most." The dates below are from 1 year ago. This passage was written by me. I looked at the words and felt my throat tighten. Not because of emotion, but because of a deep confusion. The emotion in this passage is real, I can feel it. The desperate, almost paranoid sense of certainty behind those words, the determination of "I don't need time," the certainty of "I want you most," it definitely seems like something I would do. "You always said before," Michael's voice came from the side, very softly, "you know better than me that we want to be together." I closed the photo album. "Michael," I said, "you said earlier that Daniel and I had a fight that night. Why did we fight?" He was silent for a while. "Because you told him you were going to marry me," he said, "and he didn't want to accept it." "Why wouldn't he want to accept it?" "Because he dash," Michael paused, as if he was considering his words, "he thinks I'm not good to you." "Then are you good to me?" This question came out of my mouth, even I didn't expect it. Michael looked at me, and something flashed in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. "What do you think?" he asked. I lowered my head and looked at the indwelling needle on the back of my hand. The transparent tube and the light yellow liquid flowed into my blood vessels drop by drop. He took care of me for 12 days. He remembered that I loved blueberry muffins. He massaged my calves. He signed the consent form for the surgery. "I feel like you're taking care of me," I said, "but I don't know if that's good for me." He didn't speak. He just reached out and took my hand. His hands were warm, just like the first day he woke up. That night, I had a dream. In the dream, I was standing on a balcony, wearing that white suspender skirt. The wind was strong, blowing my hair into my face. My face was full of tears and my mouth was saying something, but I couldn't hear my own voice clearly. There was a man standing opposite. Not Michael. It's another man. His face was blurry in the dream, but I knew who he was, Daniel West. He was speaking in a distant voice, as if he were speaking underwater. I could only hear a few words intermittently. "You can't be like this, you can't go on like this," he. Then the screen switched. I'm no longer on the balcony. I was sitting in an office and there was a man sitting across from me. His face was clear, it was Michael. He was wearing a light blue shirt with a work badge on his chest. His expression was very professional and calm. He was holding a pen in his hand and writing something in a notebook. He is talking. Emily, we need to talk about your recent sleep issues. I'm crying. I feel like I'm going crazy, I heard myself saying. His voice is all in my head and I can't control it. Michael put down his pen, leaned forward, and looked at me with a serious expression. You're not crazy, Emily. You're just too dependent. We need to fix this. Then the screen switched again. I was standing in a hallway with a piece of paper in my hand. There was something written on the paper, but I couldn't read it clearly. The corridor is long, dimly lit, and there is a door at the end with writing on it. I woke up with a start. The pillow was wet. My face was full of tears. That dream was too real. Not the kind of vague dream that disappears when you wake up, but like a memory being replayed, every detail as clear as a high-definition video. Office. Work license. Notebook. What he said. You're just too dependent. I was in an office, and there was a counselor sitting across from me. That counselor is Michael. But what he said didn't sound like he was speaking to a patient. That tone, so intimate. Too personal. You are too dependent. This is not what a psychological counselor should say to a patient. This is something that only people who are in a certain relationship would say. I lay on the bed, my heart beating so fast it felt like it was about to burst through my chest. I picked up the phone and it was 3:17 in the morning. I opened the browser and typed a line in the search bar with trembling fingers. Psychological counselor and patient, romantic relationship, ethics. The moment the search results popped up, I almost dropped my phone to the ground. It is against professional ethics for a psychological counselor to establish an intimate relationship with a client. The American Psychological Association clearly states that counselors may not have sexual or romantic relationships with clients. Psychological counselors who violate ethics may face consequences such as license revocation and legal proceedings. I read them one by one, sliding my fingers across the screen, and each one was like a hammer hitting my chest. Psychological counselors cannot be with patients. He is a psychological counselor. Am I his patient? That dream. Office. Work license. He said you are too dependent. If he was really my counselor, if I really became dependent on him at a certain moment, if this dependence turned into something else, then this relationship was wrong from the beginning. Not we were together for 2 years. It's not you chase me. It's not you took the initiative to propose. It's me who's sick. I went to a counselor. I became dependent on him. He didn't hold that line. I put down my phone and buried my face in the pillow. I wanted to scream, but all I could manage was a sob muffled in the cotton. When Michael arrived the next morning, I pretended nothing had happened. I ate blueberry muffins, drank coffee, and listened to him say that Oliver finally stopped stepping in his mother's hair today. But I'm watching him. Every detail is within my scope of observation. His action of pouring water was so smooth, as if he had done it countless times. The way he helped me adjust the infusion speed was so professional, as if he had been trained. The tone when he spoke to me, too calm, too measured. That was not the tone of a person talking to his fiancé. That is the tone of a psychological counselor talking to a client. I spent 3 days doing everything I could to investigate. While he was away, I used my phone to search the list of all the psychological counseling agencies in Los Angeles. I looked at them one by one and eliminated them one by one. Then I found Michael Reynolds' name on an agency's past employee list. That institution is called Harbor Mental Health Center. I wrote down the name. Then I searched for Harbor Mental Health Center complaints ethics. There are no direct consequences. But on a mental health forum, I found an anonymous thread. Posted 4 months ago. I heard that a counselor at the Harbor Mental Health Center was accused of having an inappropriate relationship with a client. I don't know how it was handled in the end, but it seems that the person no longer works there. 4 months ago, I exited the forum, opened another search engine, and searched for Emily Carter Harborside Mental Health Center. No result. But when I searched for Emily Carter, I saw another piece of news. It wasn't the news about the falling building, it was an earlier one, from the local newspaper 10 months ago. Community Mental Health Talk, How to Recognize Emotional Manipulation. The accompanying picture is a photo of a lecture, with 2 people standing on the stage. One is a middle-aged woman, and next to her is a man. Michael. There is a line of small print under the lecture's title. Speaker, Michael Reynolds, Counselor, Guest Facilitator, Emily Carter, Mental Health Advocate. Mental Health Advocate. I appeared as a facilitating guest at a mental health lecture. And the keynote speaker is Michael. 10 months ago we were seen together in public. Not as a couple, but as counselors and facilitating guests. I put down my phone and took a lot of deep breaths. But my heart was still beating wildly, like an out-of-control metronome. I started piecing the pieces together in my head. I went to counseling. I met Michael. I became dependent on him. He's crossed a line. We developed a relationship of sorts. Then I saw the news. Fall. Emotional disputes. Daniel West. Who is Daniel? That name is spinning around in my head like a key, but I can't find the corresponding lock. On the 14th day, I was discharged from the hospital. Michael came to pick me up. He drove a dark gray SUV. The car was very clean and the air smelled of cedar and sandalwood. He helped me put my luggage in the back seat, opened the passenger door for me, and after I was seated, he leaned over and fastened my seatbelt. His face was very close to mine. I could see his eyelashes, dark brown and very long. His skin was great, almost poreless, and his jawline was clean. For a psychological counselor to look like this is a red flag in itself. No, I can't think like that. It's not his fault. What one looks like is not something a person can control. But he signed Fiancé on the signature sheet. He signed a consent form for surgery that read man-made injury. He told me you jumped. Which one is true? After driving for about 40 minutes, we arrived at the foot of an apartment building. Not the address in the news, it was another place, on the other side of the city. A mid-range apartment with gray-white exterior walls and a few palm trees in front of the building. We live here? I asked. Well, 3rd floor. He got out of the car and went around to the trunk to get his luggage. I looked up at a balcony on the 3rd floor. There is a chair and a few potted plants on the balcony, which looks ordinary. This is our home. After entering the door, I stood in the entrance hall and looked at the place where I was said to have lived for 2 years. Gray sofa. White kitchen tiles. Dark blue curtains. Exactly what he said. An orange cat jumped down from the sofa, walked to my feet, looked up at me, and barked. Oliver. I knelt down and touched its head. It narrowed its eyes and made a purring sound. My hands were shaking, but I tried not to let Michael notice. Do you want to take a rest first? He stood behind me, his voice was very soft, or eat something first. I want to take a bath. Okay. The bathroom is on the left side of the corridor. I'll get you a towel. He turned and left. I stood in the entrance hall and looked at the apartment. Everything was perfect. Gray sofa, white tiles, dark blue curtains. Every detail was exactly as he had described it before. It makes me feel like this apartment is not a home, but a set. A setup carefully designed to convince me that this is my life. I walked into the living room and looked at the bookshelves. There are some books on the bookshelves, novels, psychology books, a few cookbooks. I pulled out a psychology book and opened the title page, which read To Emily, May You Find Inner Peace. M.R.M.R. Michael Reynolds. This book was given to me by him. But I noticed tucked between the pages was a receipt from a bookstore, dated 2 months ago. 2 months ago. I was still in a coma at that time. He bought this book and put it on his shelf after I passed out. I put the book back and walked to the bathroom. Michael had hung the towels on the rack and folded the bath towels and placed them on the toilet seat. There were shampoo and conditioner on the bathroom shelves, all from brands I had never heard of. There are 2 toothbrushes, one blue and one pink, placed in the same cup. The bristles of the pink one are a little deformed, as if they have been used for a long time. I picked up the pink toothbrush and looked at it. The bristles definitely look like they've been used for a few months. If he had arranged this after I was unconscious, he wouldn't have thought to prepare a used toothbrush. Unless he actually lived with me. Unless all this is true. I stood in the bathroom, holding that toothbrush in my hand, feeling like a man spinning in a maze, with every path leading to a dead end. After taking a shower, I sat on the sofa in the living room and Oliver jumped up and lay on my lap. Michael was cooking in the kitchen, and the smell of onions and garlic came from the pot. I looked at his back, he was wearing a white t-shirt, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and he was cutting tomatoes. His movements were very skillful, with the knife rising and falling in an even rhythm. This man who cooked for me in the kitchen, this man who remembered that I liked blueberry muffins, this man who signed the consent form for the surgery, should I trust him or not? That night, after I waited for Michael to fall asleep, I quietly got up. We sleep in the same bed. He said we always slept like this. The bed was big, he slept on the left side and I slept on the right side. When he fell asleep, he breathed so softly that he could barely hear any sound. I walked barefoot to the living room, picked up my phone, and opened the browser. I searched for Daniel West Los Angeles. This time, I found something more. A news item from 6 months ago with the headline Local Attorney Daniel West Wins Major Lawsuit. The accompanying picture is a photo of a man about 30 years old, with short brown hair, wearing glasses, and a serious expression. I stared at that photo for a long time. Don't know. Not impressed at all. But I noticed one detail: the release date of this news was 6 months ago. And in my photo album, there are photos of me and Michael from 6 months ago. At that time, I already looked very wrong. My smile was forced and my eyes were red. Daniel West, attorney. Michael said you loved him and said that man didn't deserve your love. If I really loved Daniel, why don't I have any pictures of him in my photo album? Why isn't his name in my address book? Why, unless Michael deleted it? The thought gave me chills. I continued my search. This time, I searched for Daniel West Michael Reynolds. Nothing. There is no overlap between the two names. But when I searched for Daniel West Harborside Mental Health Center, I found one result. It was a customer review of Harborside Mental Health Center, posted on Google Maps, 9 months ago. This organization is such a letdown. My friend received counseling here, but the relationship between the counselor and her became increasingly abnormal. I consulted a lawyer, named Daniel West, and he said that this situation is completely open to complaint. But my friend didn't want to. She said she can't live without the counselor. I'm really worried about her now. This review has 2 stars out of 5. The publisher's name is a pseudonym. My fingers hovered above the screen, my whole figure frozen. Daniel West is an attorney. A lawyer that I, or someone close to me, consulted. It's about Michael. My friend received counseling here, but the relationship between the counselor and her became increasingly dysfunctional. Is that friend me? My friend didn't want to. She said she couldn't live without the counselor. Can't live without. These 3 words were like a knife, piercing the deepest part of my heart. Because I know how it feels. I said in my dream, I feel like I'm going crazy. His voice is all in my head and I can't control it. That's dependence. That's pathological, unhealthy dependence. That's not a woman's love for a man, that's a patient's addiction to a doctor. Michael knew this. He is a psychological counselor. He has been trained, and he knows better than anyone else what dependence is, what empathy is, and what ethical boundaries are. He crossed that line. He took advantage of my dependence. My stomach began to lurch, a rush of acid rising into my throat. I covered my mouth, rushed to the bathroom, lay on the toilet and retched for a long time. Nothing came out, but my stomach kept twitching, like a fist clenching repeatedly inside. I raised my head and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes were red, and I had removed the gauze on my forehead, revealing a scar about 5 centimeters long. The traces of sutures were still there, lying like a centipede next to my hairline. This is what he gave me. Whether he pushed me or I jumped on my own, this scar, this twisted relationship, this blank, chaotic life where I can't distinguish between true and false, he gave me all this. The next day I started investigating more systematically. I took advantage of Michael's shopping trip to the supermarket, which he did every day at 3 p.m. for about 40 minutes, and rummaged through every corner of the apartment. In the closet, my clothes hang together with his clothes. I have about 20 items of clothing over there, mostly casual, a few dresses, and a coat. The size of the clothes is correct, and the style is pretty much in line with my aesthetic: simple colors, comfortable fabrics. But the labels on all the clothes are still there. There is nothing that has been washed with the label blurred. He bought these clothes and hung them here. After I passed out. There are 4 pairs of shoes in the shoe cabinet, 2 pairs of sneakers, 1 pair of flat shoes, and 1 pair of sandals. The soles are clean with no signs of wear. There is a jewelry box in the drawer with several necklaces and a pair of earrings. Silver, simple style. One of the necklaces is the same necklace as the one I had in my personal belongings when I was hospitalized. There was a tube of hand cream and a book in the bedside table drawer. The title of the book is Attachment and Trauma, and it's written by someone I don't know. The bookmark is in chapter 3, which is titled Boundary Issues in Therapeutic Relationships. He is reading this chapter. He is reading a book about boundary issues in therapeutic relationships. I stood in my bedroom, holding that book in my hand, and it felt like the world was spinning. Then I went to his study, the smallest room in the apartment that he had converted into an office. There was a table, a chair, a laptop, and a whiteboard hanging on the wall filled with scrawled notes. I opened his laptop. No password is set. This gave me another moment of suspicion. If he was hiding something, he would have set a password. But maybe it was because he was hiding something that he deliberately left no password to make me think he had nothing to hide. I opened his browser history. Mostly normal news sites, weather reports, a few shopping sites. But I turned to the records from 3 months ago, that is, the period after I fell. There is one entry in the search history, Time for patients to recover their memory after brain injury. Another one. How to help your partner recover their memory. There is another one. Emily Carter Falls News. He was searching for his own name. No, he was searching for my news. Scroll down further and I see something that makes my heart beat faster. A draft email, addressed to Emily Carter, was not sent. The date was the third day after I fell. The content of the email is, Emily, I'm sorry. I know this is all my fault. I shouldn't have let you get into this deep. But your situation is very dangerous now, and I can't tell you the truth. When you get better, I will tell you everything. Please believe me, I never meant to hurt you. I stared at the email for about 5 minutes. I can't tell you the truth. I never meant to hurt you. What is the truth? I continue to turn. In his download folder, I found a PDF file with a string of numbers in its name. I opened it and found it was a medical record. My medical records. It's not a record of this hospitalization, it's an earlier one. The date is 1 year ago. The record reads, Patient Emily Carter, female, 27 years old, went to the hospital for anxiety symptoms. The patient reported sleep disturbance, mood swings, inattention and other symptoms. The initial assessment was generalized anxiety disorder. It is recommended to have psychological consultation once a week. There is a psychological counselor's signature below. Michael Reynolds. I am his patient. I am his patient. Our relationship didn't start with you chase me. It started when I walked into his office, sat across from him, and told him I couldn't sleep. He hid this fact. He told me we were lovers. He told me you chase me. He put all the responsibility on me. I was the one who took the initiative. I was the one who proposed. And I was the one who made sure you were the one I wanted. But that certainty may not be love. That could be empathy. It may be a pathological dependence on a healer that a patient develops in a state of extreme vulnerability. And he took advantage of that. I closed the PDF file, closed the laptop, sat in his chair, and felt my breathing getting faster and faster. My chest felt like it was being pressed down by something, and I had to suck in every breath. He is not my fiancé. He is my psychiatrist. I crossed a line that I shouldn't have crossed. No, he did. He is the one who should hold the border. He was trained, he knew transference was a common occurrence in therapy, and he knew how to deal with it, but he chose another path. He chose to step over. Then he convinced me that it was all my choice. My cell phone rang. It's a text message from a number with no name. Emily, this is Daniel West. We need to talk. My heart stopped for a beat. How did he know my number? How did he know I was awake? How did he? I stared at the text message, my fingers hovering above the screen. There was the sound of a car engine outside the window. Michael was back. I closed the laptop, put it back to its original position, walked out of the study quickly, returned to the bedroom, lay back on the bed, and pulled the quilt up to my chin. The door opened. Michael's voice came from the entrance. Emily, I bought the yogurt you like. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. He didn't come in. I heard the sound of him putting things in the kitchen, the rustling of plastic bags, the sound of the refrigerator door opening and closing, and then his footsteps heading toward the living room, and then the sound of the sofa sinking. I opened my eyes and picked up my phone. The light from the screen was particularly dazzling in the dark bedroom. I sent a message back to that number. Who are you? The response is almost instantaneous. I'm the lawyer you contacted before. You came to me and said your counselor crossed a line. You said you wanted to report him, but you later went back on your word. I kept trying to contact you after your accident, but you were hospitalized. Are you safe now? I clutched the phone, my knuckles turning white. I've seen a lawyer. I approached Daniel West. I want to report Michael. But I regretted it. Can't live without the words in that review. My friend doesn't want to. She said she can't live without that counselor. That person is me. I messaged Daniel back. I can't call right now. He'll be in at any moment. I understand. Contact me when it's convenient for you. This matter is very important, Emily. When you came to me, you told me something, and I think you may not remember it. But you need to know. What? You said he controlled all your social relationships. You said he made you cut off everyone. You said you tried leaving him, but he would convince you to go back every time. You also said he paused. You also said you discovered he had installed location software on your phone. I put the phone screen down on the bed and curled up into a ball. Positioning software. Control social relationships. Convinced me to go back. This is not love. This is manipulation. I saw the draft email on his laptop. I can't tell you the truth. What is the truth? The truth is, I'm not his fiancé. I am his patient. The truth is, he doesn't love me. He was controlling me. The truth is, I heard his voice coming from the living room, very soft, as if on the phone. I know, but her situation is not stable yet. I will take care of it, don't worry. I'll take care of it. These words made all the hairs on my body stand up. That night, I had another dream. But this time it's not a fragment, it's a complete memory. I was sitting in an office, the one I saw in the photo, with psychology certificates hanging on the wall. I was wearing a gray sweater and holding a tissue in my hand, which had been crumpled into a ball. Michael sat across from me, wearing a light blue shirt and holding the pen. Emily, you're doing much better lately, he said. Do you think we can start to reduce the frequency of consultations? No, I heard myself say, in a voice too urgent to be mine, I'm not good yet. I still need you. He was silent for a while. Then he put down his pen, leaned forward, and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face. That expression was not professional or restrained. That's a kind of Emily, he said, his voice lower than usual. You know our relationship has boundaries. I know, I said, tears starting to fall again, but I can't help it. The first thing I think about when I wake up every day is you. I think about what you'll think before I do anything. You're building dependency, he said, but... There was no warning in his tone, more like a confirmation. I know, I said, but I can't help it. You're the only person I trust. He was silent again. The silence was longer this time. Then he said something, which was as clear in the dream as if it were engraved on glass. If you need me, I'll be here. Not we need to end the consulting relationship. Not you should see another counselor. Not your dependencies are a problem that need to be dealt with. Rather, if you need me, I'll be here. He chose not to push me away. He chose to stay. Then the screen switched. I'm not in the office anymore. I was in a room, the lights were dim and the curtains were drawn. I lay on the bed and Michael lay next to me. His arms were around my waist, my back pressed against his chest. He spoke in my ear, his voice very soft. You don't tell anyone, okay? This is between us. Okay, I heard myself say. You don't need anyone else, it's enough for you to have me. Okay. You're mine, Emily. I'm yours. I woke up screaming from my dream. Michael wasn't in bed. I sat up, covered in cold sweat, and my heart felt like it was beating out of my chest. The bedroom door was closed, but a ray of light came from under the door. The living room light was on. I heard his voice. He's on the phone again. She started asking Daniel West's name. I don't know how she knew. Maybe the memory is recovering. He's talking about Daniel West. I walked to the door barefoot and put my ear against the crack of the door. I know this will destroy me, but I don't care anymore. I just don't want her to get hurt anymore. Who is he talking to? His voice sounded tired, completely different from the gentle, patient Michael during the day. You are right, I should have told her earlier, but I didn't dare. I was afraid that she would leave. I know this is very selfish. He paused. Okay. I will tell her, no matter what the result is. Then there was a long silence. I heard him sigh, and then footsteps. He was walking toward the bedroom. I quickly returned to bed, closed my eyes, adjusted my breathing, and pretended to sleep. The door opened. He came in and stood beside the bed. I could feel him looking at me. Then he bent down and pulled the quilt up to cover my exposed shoulders. His fingers lingered on my shoulder for a second. Then he whispered something so low that it was almost inaudible. I'm sorry, Emily. The next morning, everything was business as usual. He made breakfast, fried eggs, toast, avocado, and a glass of orange juice. He brought breakfast to the table, pulled out a chair, and waited for me to sit down. How are you feeling today? He asked. Better, I said. I want to go for a walk. He glanced at me, with a hint of hesitation in his expression. I think you may need to rest for a few more days. I'm just walking around the neighborhood, I said. I won't go far. He was silent for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Then I'll go with you. I can just go by myself. Emily, Michael, I looked up into his eyes. I need to be alone for a while. We stared at each other for about 5 seconds. Then he looked away and nodded. Okay. Don't go too far. I changed my clothes and walked out of the apartment. The moment the elevator door closed, my legs softened a little. I leaned against the elevator wall and took several deep breaths. When I reached the first floor, I walked out of the apartment building. The sunlight made me squint my eyes. The sun is always strong in Los Angeles, even in the morning. I didn't take a walk in the neighborhood. I walked out of the community gate and hailed a taxi on the side of the road. Where to go? The driver asked. I gave the address Daniel West had given me, his law office. The car drove for 20 minutes. I sat in the back seat and looked out the window at the street scene, palm trees, gas stations, Starbucks, one Mexican restaurant after another. These scenery are both familiar and strange to me, like pictures I have seen before but never really lived in. Daniel West's law office is in a small office on the third floor of an inconspicuous office building. The words West Law Firm are pasted on the glass on the door, and some of the letters are already tilted. When I pushed the door open, a man wearing glasses stood up from behind the desk. He is thinner than he looks in the photo. He has short brown hair and is a little messy. He is wearing a suit jacket that doesn't fit well and his tie is a little crooked. His expression became very complicated the moment he saw me, relieved, but also nervous. "Emily," he said, "you're here. You said you had something to tell me." I stood at the door without sitting down. He nodded, picked up a folder from the table and handed it to me. "You take a look at this first." I opened the folder. Inside were several pages, screenshots of emails, dated more than a year ago. The sender of the first email was me and the recipient was Daniel. The content of the email is, "Daniel, I need your help. My counselor has crossed a line. We have developed an intimate relationship, and I know it's wrong, but I can't control myself. I want to report him, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid something will happen to him, and I'm afraid I won't be able to handle it. What should I do?" My hands started to shake. The second email was sent by me again and was dated about a week later. "Daniel, I decided not to report it. He said he loved me. He said he was willing to give up everything for me. He said we could start over. I believe him. Please leave this matter alone." The third email, the sender is Daniel and the recipient is me, Emily. "I can't ignore it. You know this is wrong. He took advantage of you when you were most vulnerable. This is not love, this is manipulation. You were right before, you need to report him. No matter what you think, I will help you." I raised my head and looked at Daniel. "Did I write these?" "Yes. You came to me 3 times. The first time was to seek legal advice, the second time was to say that you decided to report, and the third time was to say that you had changed your mind. You never contacted me again after that." Then he paused and pushed up his glasses. "Then I saw the news. You fell. Do you think he pushed me?" Daniel was silent for a long time. "I don't know," he said, "but I know one thing, before that, you were very scared. The second time you came to me, you were a wreck. You said that he found out that you wanted to report him, and he said that if this was exposed, his life would be ruined. You said he was very angry, like you had never seen him before. He looked at me with something deep and tired in his eyes. You said, 'I think he's going to hurt me.' I thought he was going to hurt me." The words coming out of Daniel's mouth were like a bullet through my chest. "Then you fell," Daniel said. "I tried to contact you, but you were in hospital and the hospital wouldn't let me see you. Your fiancé, the so-called fiancé, told the hospital that only family members could visit. I can't even find out which floor your ward is on." "He's always there," I said, "never leaving." "I know. So I've been waiting. Waiting for you to be discharged from hospital, waiting for you to recover, waiting for you to have the opportunity to see my news." I sat in the chair across from him, closed the folder, and placed it on my lap. "Daniel," I said, "you told me I was his patient, right?" "Right. He crossed a line." "Right. He manipulated me." Daniel hesitated. "Emily, I don't want to make decisions for you. But from what you told me at the time, yes, he took advantage of your trust and reliance on him. This is one of the most serious violations of counseling ethics." I looked down at my hands on my knees. The fingers are long and the nails are cut short. These are my hands, but I feel like they don't belong to me. "One more thing," Daniel said, his voice getting lower, "you told me before that you saw something on his computer." "What?" "He's recording information about you. Not just the consultation notes, it's everything. Your sleeping hours, your eating habits, your social activities, your mood changes. You said it wasn't a normal consultation record, it was like monitoring." "Monitor. He's monitoring me. He has been recording every detail of my life since I didn't even know it. When to sleep, when to eat, when to be happy and when to be sad. He knows me better than I know myself. That's why he takes care of me with such precision. He knows that I like blueberry muffins, that I like to hold a cup with my left hand, that I like the smell of cedar and sandalwood, not because he loves me, but because he's documenting me. He's studying me." I saw the ebook, Attachment and Trauma, on his laptop, bookmarked under the chapter Boundary Issues in Therapeutic Relationships. He was working on the border, after he had already crossed it. He was figuring out how to deal with the consequences. "Daniel," I said, "what will happen if I report him?" "His license would be revoked. He could face civil litigation. If the evidence is sufficient, there could even be criminal liability." "What if I don't report it?" Daniel looked at me and was silent for a long time. "Then he will continue to be his counselor. Move on to the next patient." And then, he didn't go on. He didn't say anything further, but I knew what he wanted to say. Then, the next I will appear. Another fragile, anxious, sleepless woman walks into his office. She would sit across from him and tell him her pain. He would listen, understand, and use his professionalism and gentleness to make her feel that someone finally understood her. Then she'll become dependent on him, then he'll cross that line, and then she'll be like me and can't tell if it's love or illness. I stood up. Thank you, Daniel. He also stood up, but hesitated to speak. What's wrong? Are you okay? This question made me laugh a little. It wasn't a happy smile, but a very bitter sound squeezed out of the throat. I don't know, I said, I barely even remember who I am. But I know at least one thing, I'm not his fiancé. I'm not the one who takes the initiative to chase him. I'm not the one who proposed. I looked into Daniel's eyes. I was a patient who was being manipulated by him. When I walked out of the law office, the sun was still dazzling. I stood on the side of the road and looked up at the sky. The sky in Los Angeles is always this gray-blue color, with no clouds in sight, like a piece of faded cloth. I took out my phone and sent Michael a message, I'm back. His reply was almost instantaneous, okay. Be careful on the road. Be careful on the road. He is always so gentle. Always so considerate. Always so impeccable. This is the scariest place. If he had been an obvious bad guy, a grumpy, controlling guy whose face was written all over his face, I would have left a long time ago. But he's not. He is gentle, patient, and remembers all your preferences. He will take care of you every step of the way when you are sick, hold your hand when you are scared, and tell you you are not crazy when you doubt yourself. This is the most deadly manipulation. Not with violence, but with gentleness. What makes you unable to live without him is not because of fear, but because you feel that you can't live without him. I got into a taxi and gave the address of my apartment. The car drove away and I leaned against the car window, looking at the street scene and stepping back. Daniel's words replayed in my mind over and over again. He said he found out you wanted to report him. He said his life would be ruined if this came to light. He said he was angry like you had never seen him before. He was very angry. A look I've never seen before. Then I fell. Was it an accident? Was it him who pushed it? Or did I dance it myself? I have no idea. I really don't know. My memory is like a shattered mirror. Each fragment contains a different image, a hand, a balcony, the sound of the wind, the ground. But I couldn't piece together the complete truth. Maybe I'll never know. Maybe that's the cruelest part. Maybe the truth will always be locked in the blank space in my mind, and that blank space was created by his own hands. When they got back to the apartment, Michael was sitting on the couch with Oliver in his lap. When he saw me coming in, he stood up, and Oliver jumped off his lap with a cry of displeasure. Where have you been? He asked, his tone casual. Just walking around the community. He didn't ask. He just nodded and said, Are you hungry? I'll make lunch for you. I watched his back walking towards the kitchen. That back view white t-shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbows, broad shoulders. I watched this back view for 14 days, and it felt strange every time. But now, when I look at it, what comes to my mind is not unfamiliarity, but something so deep and complicated that I can't quite put my finger on it. Not hate. Not love. Not fear. It's a gray that's mixed together, like paint being stirred up. Michael, I called him. He turned around. Let's talk. He looked at me and was silent for a while. Then he walked back, sat on the sofa, and patted the seat next to him. Okay. Sit down and talk. I didn't sit down. I stood opposite him, looking at him across the coffee table. You're not my fiancé, I said. His expression didn't change. He just looked at me, waiting for me to continue. You were my counselor. I was receiving therapy from you. You crossed a line. You took advantage of my dependence on you. Then you made me believe that all of this was my choice. It was me who pursued you. It was me who proposed marriage. It was me who was sure that you are the one I want. I took a deep breath. Am I right? Silence. The room was so quiet that you could hear Oliver licking his fur in the corner. Then Michael lowered his head and clasped his hands on his knees. His shoulders slumped, and all the strength seemed to have been drained from his entire body. Yes, he said. His voice was very low and light, like a feather falling to the ground. You knew all this from the beginning, I said, and you know I don't remember. You know I can be remade. You told me we were an unmarried couple. You told me we were getting married next month. You implanted a new identity in me when I was at my most vulnerable. I didn't. You signed the surgery consent form. My voice suddenly became louder, and even I was shocked. You signed fiancé. You signed a document that you were not qualified to sign. You let me. My voice broke. My eyes were hot, but I didn't cry. I gritted my teeth and forced back those tears. You made me yours. Michael raised his head and looked at me. His eyes were red, but he wasn't crying. His lips were trembling, but he said nothing. You told me you jumped, I said, but Daniel told me you were angry when you found out I wanted to report you. My voice broke again, and this time I didn't hold it back. A tear slid down my cheek and fell on the glass surface of the coffee table, making a soft sound. Did you push me? The question was like a knife cutting through all the air in the room. Michael looked at me and something broke in his eyes. No, he said, his voice almost inaudible, I didn't push you. Who pushed that? No one pushes you. That was an accident? It's not an accident. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, as if making a decision. Then he opened his eyes, looked at me and said, that night, when you drank, you called me and said you were standing on the balcony. You said you were going to jump off. You said you wanted everyone to know that I ruined you. When I rushed over, you were already standing outside the railing. I tried to pull you back, but you struggled. You said his voice trembled. You said, don't touch me. Every inch you touch makes me sick. These words hit me like a hammer on the chest. Don't touch me. Every inch you touch makes me sick. Have these words ever come out of my mouth? And you let go, Michael said, his voice barely a whisper. You just let go. The room was quiet again. I stood across from the coffee table and looked at him. He sat on the sofa, clasping his hands and rubbing his thumbs together. His shoulders were shaking, and his whole body was like a string that was too tight and could break at any time. I didn't push you, he said, but if you hadn't let go, he did not continue. If I hadn't let go, you wouldn't be standing on that balcony. I finished for him. He didn't deny it. We were silent for a long time. Oliver came around the corner, jumped up on the couch, and lay in his lap, purring. He looked down at Oliver, running his fingers unconsciously along its back. Why didn't you say? I asked, why didn't you say you were my counselor? Why did you make me believe that I was your fiancé? He was silent for a long time. And he said, because I want to be that person. Who? Your fiancé. He raised his head and looked at me. There was something in his eyes that I had never seen before, not gentleness, not patience, but a kind of naked vulnerability without any pretense. I knew I didn't deserve it. I knew what I did was wrong. From the moment I crossed that line, I knew I was going to ruin everything sooner or later. But I couldn't help it. He smiled bitterly. Look, I can't even control myself. Who am I to teach you how to control your emotions? I looked at him, this man sitting on the sofa, holding an orange cat in his hand. He doesn't look like a manipulator, like a counselor who's overstepped his bounds, or someone who pretended to be fiancé on a consent form for surgery. He seemed like a regular, broken guy who had done something wrong but didn't know how to fix it. But I know that feeling itself is dangerous. Because that's what he's been doing, making me think he's not a bad guy. Makes me think he's just a regular guy who made mistakes. Makes me think maybe it's not his fault, maybe it's the fault of both of us. Michael, I said, I need you to answer me a question. Answer me honestly. Okay. Do you love me, or are you controlling me? He looked at me for a long, long time. Then he said something that completely broke me. I don't know. I don't know. These 3 words are crueler than any answer. If he replies I love you, I can argue with him, that's not love, that's manipulation. If he responded, I'm controlling you, I could hate him, hate someone who ruined my life. But he responded, I don't know. Because he really doesn't know. He crossed that line, but he didn't know whether it was love or illness. He took care of me for 14 days, but he didn't know whether it was true love or guilt. He pretended to be fiancé, but he didn't know whether he wanted to protect me or possess me. There is no clear label for this relationship between us. Not love, not the doctor-patient relationship, not manipulation, not victim and perpetrator. It is a gray, sticky mass that is indistinguishable between you and me. We went into the abyss together. It wasn't him who pushed me. I didn't dance it myself. It was the balcony we walked to together. It was us standing outside the railing together. It was us together, letting go. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the windowsill of the living room, not the balcony, but the windowsill of the living room, looking at the city outside the window. The nights in Los Angeles never really get dark, and the lights in the distance stretch like a golden ocean to the horizon. Michael is in the bedroom. The door is closed. The lights were also turned off. There is a wall between us, but I feel that what is separated between us is not a wall, but an entire abyss that cannot be crossed. I'm thinking about what Daniel said, you can report him. I'm thinking about what Michael said, I don't know. I was thinking about the words in that news, suspected emotional dispute. I'm thinking about my own words. If I ever said them at all, don't you touch me. Every inch you touch makes me sick. Is this true? Do I really find him disgusting? Or was I just overwhelmed with anger and fear at that moment? I have no idea. I don't know anything. Oliver jumped up on the windowsill and lay on my lap, purring. I looked down at it and touched its back. Its fur is very soft, orange, and glows golden under the light. This cat is real. Its weight, its warmth, its purr, these are real. But what about everything else? My memory? My identity? My fiancé? My love? Are these true? Or are they just reprogrammed hallucinations in my head? I picked up the phone and opened Daniel's dialog box. My fingers hover above the keyboard. I decided to report him. I typed this line but didn't send it. Then I deleted it. Another call, I need time. Delete it again. Another call, I don't know what to do. Delete it again. Finally I closed the dialog box and opened something else, my notes. The memo is blank, nothing. My fingers paused on the keyboard for a moment, then I started typing. My name is Emily Carter. I am 28 years old. I live in Los Angeles. I have a counselor. His name is Michael Reynolds. I don't know if he is my counselor or my fiancé, because they are two identities in the same person, and I can't tell which one is real. I paused. Maybe that's the answer. If I can't tell, then the relationship itself is wrong. I put my phone on the windowsill, leaned against the window, and closed my eyes. The wind blows in through the cracks in the window, very light, with the dryness and warmth unique to Los Angeles nights. The wind is light. I don't know how long I sat on the windowsill. Maybe an hour, maybe 3 hours. When I opened my eyes, it was already dark, and the sky in the east changed from dark blue to light purple, and then to light orange. I stood up and Oliver jumped off my lap, yelping disapprovingly. I walked to the bedroom door, but it was still closed. I put my hand on the doorknob but didn't turn it off. I stood outside the door for a long time. Then I turned around and walked to the entrance, put on my shoes and picked up my bag. I didn't bring much, just my phone, wallet, and that silver necklace. I opened the door and walked out. The lights in the hallway were voice activated, and the moment I walked out, the lights came on. I walked to the elevator and pressed the button. The elevator door opened. I walked in and pressed the button for the first floor. The moment the elevator door closed, I looked back at the corridor. The corridor was empty, nothing. The elevator reaches the first floor. The door opened. I walked out of the apartment building. The morning air was cool and smelled of dew. The palm trees in the community swayed gently in the wind, and the sky in the distance was completely bright. I stood at the gate of the community and took out my mobile phone. I opened Daniel's dialog box and typed, "I'm not going to report him. But I'm not going back either." After sending it out, I put the phone back into my bag. I walked to the side of the road and stopped a taxi. The driver was a middle-aged man wearing sunglasses, and a Spanish song was playing on the radio that I didn't understand. "Where to go?" he asked. I got in the back seat and closed the door. "Go to the airport." The car started. I leaned against the car window and watched the apartment building getting smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror, getting further and further away, and finally turned into a gray, disappearing around the corner. I opened my phone and took a look at the memo. The conversation I typed last night is still there. Maybe that's the answer. If I can't tell, then the relationship itself is wrong. I deleted this paragraph. Then I turned off the memo. 3 years later. I live in San Diego. A city 2 hours drive from Los Angeles, neither big nor small, with sea, sunshine and palm trees. I work for a non-profit doing community mental health outreach. Yes, mental health. I haven't given up on this field, I've just changed my approach to participation. I'm no longer a facilitating guest. I work behind the scenes, doing project management, writing plans, and coordinating resources. My colleagues didn't know my past, all they knew was that I moved from Los Angeles, lived alone, had an orange cat, and occasionally went to the beach during my lunch break. Oliver came with me. It's fatter now, and it makes my legs numb when it sleeps on my lap, but I've never pushed it away. Some of my memory came back, but not all. The doctor said some memories may never come back, and some memories may never have been real, they may have been pieced together by my brain on its own from fragments. This is normal, the doctor said. When you have large gaps in your memory, your brain will try to fill them in. Sometimes the fill-in is real, sometimes it's not. So, I will never know exactly what happened on the balcony that night. I don't know if I let go or if he pushed me. I don't know if I said don't touch me or save me. I didn't know if I wanted to die or live at that moment. I accepted this not knowing. Because some things may never have answers. And learning to live with not knowing is itself an answer. After get off work that day, I went to the supermarket. I bought some fruit, a box of cat food, and a bottle of red wine. I was walking on the way home, holding a plastic bag in my hand. The sun was setting and the sky was dyed orange. I passed by a small clinic. It's not a big institution, just a 2-story white house with a wooden sign hanging at the door that says Community Health Service Center. This kind of small clinic is very common in San Diego. It is usually opened by some retired doctors or young doctors who are just starting out. Their services are residents of nearby communities. I would have just walked over. But I saw something on the sign at the door of the clinic. There was a line of small words written, mental health consultation. I stopped. The door of the clinic is glass, so you can see inside. A small waiting area, a few plastic chairs, a coffee table with a few magazines on it. There is a painting hanging on the wall, depicting a sunset by the sea. Then I saw a man. He was standing behind the counter, sorting papers. He was wearing a dark blue polo shirt with no work badge on the chest. His hair is shorter than 3 years ago, and his temples are a little grayer. His jawline was still as sharp as ever, but there were some tired lines on his face. Michael. I stood outside the glass door, looking at him from a distance of about 3 meters. He lost some weight. His shoulders are not as broad as before, or in other words, he is too big in my memory. He lowered his head and was sorting the files, moving very slowly, as if a person was doing something mechanical and without thinking. He didn't see me. I stood outside the door for about 10 seconds. Maybe longer, maybe shorter. Then he raised his head and glanced at the door. He saw me. We looked at each other. His expression changed at that moment, not surprise, not joy, not fear, not guilt. It's something very complicated that I can't explain clearly. It's like a person standing on the beach, watching the waves coming in the distance. He knows that the waves will hit him, but he doesn't hide. He looked at me and moved his lips slightly, as if he was saying something, but made no sound. I looked into his eyes. Those dark brown eyes used to look at me tenderly, looked at me tiredly, and looked at me fragilely 3 years ago. Now, there is nothing in those eyes, not empty, but a kind of calmness after being hollowed out. He works an ordinary job in a small community clinic. Not a counselor anymore. Daniel later told me that shortly after I left, Michael took the initiative to submit a self-report to the psychology committee. He admitted all the facts of his inappropriate relationship with the visitor. His license was revoked. There was no civil action, no criminal liability, because I submitted no evidence and his self-report was not sufficient to warrant a criminal prosecution. He lost his career. But it was not completely destroyed. I didn't know this until later. One night after I left Los Angeles, Daniel sent me a message telling me about it. I didn't reply. But I looked under that message for a long time. He chose to self-report. After I left, without me reporting him, he came forward on his own. I don't know if it's out of guilt or some logic I'll never understand. But I know one thing, he did what he was supposed to do. It's just too late. It's too late. I stood outside the glass door and he stood behind the counter. There are 3 meters and a whole pane of glass between us. I remembered that sentence. Not the sentence I wrote in the memo. It was earlier, maybe one night, maybe one morning, maybe it was what I said to myself while half asleep and half awake. We are not each other's salvation, we are each other's abyss. I looked at him and he looked at me. Then I turned around and left. The plastic bag swayed in my hand, and the red wine bottle inside made a gentle clinking sound. The light of the setting sun fell on me, warm and stretched the shadow very long. I was walking on the sidewalk and passed a bakery. The smell of bread wafted out, sweet and buttery. Passing a palm tree, its leaves rustled in the wind. Passing by a woman holding a dog, she smiled at me and I smiled at her. The wind is light. The wind in San Diego is always very light, carrying the salty smell of seawater and the fragrance of flowers. I walked about a street without looking back. No one caught up. I didn't look back.